Everybody, it's Amy here at GrowthZone, and I am so excited to have Amanda Kaiser with us today. We are really fortunate that she was able to make time in her busy schedule. Um, she has presented with us numerous times and has been one of our most popular speakers. Let's see, we're going to just go through some slides, just a few logistics. The webinar is being recorded. So regardless if anybody attended, as long as they registered, they're going to receive an email with the recording. So hopefully we will have that out in the next 24 hours. Keep an eye out on your inbox and you will receive an email with a link. And again, next 24 hours with the recording link and also to all of the resources that we discussed today. All right, moving on. Just taking a look here. Okay, so a little bit of housekeeping. I know that everybody has been on Zoom 8 million times, but just bear with me. In the chat panel, there are settings at the bottom. And so if you want everybody to see what you're saying, please make sure that you have selected the correct setting for that. If you have something just for us, you can change that to panel to send it a direct message, to, excuse me, just to us. All righty. I just have to shrink one screen here. That's what's going on. All right, so on to our next slide. We are just trying to, here we go. There we go. All right, so CAE credit, everyone that attends the live presentation is going to receive CAE credit. I've actually there will be a link on the recording page to information about CAE. It stands for Certified Association Executive, and it's a designation that is run through ASAE. But a lot of you have reached out and asked about it and wanted the details. So there will be a link on the recording page to that. With CAE, we're going to send you your certificate. Not going to have your name on it. Don't worry about it. ASAE, they said that's absolutely fine. So we'll need to put your name on the certificate or however you handle those things. All right. Next up. Okay, so I would be remiss if I did not invite you to our website, GrowthZone.com. We have a lot of our customers here with us today. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. And others of you may not be as familiar with our association management software. We have it for associations, real estate associations, and a Chamber of Commerce edition. So I encourage you to just go onto our website, GrowthZone.com, and click on to an interactive product tour. It's a really short way just to get a high-level glance at what we offer and how we help associations work smarter. I'm going to share the links in the chat panel, and of course, there'll be links on the recording page as well. The Knowledge Library, there is something that you can find us on social media, everywhere from Facebook, LinkedIn, Pinterest, and we leverage social media resources for associations and chambers to provide resources. These are not sales pieces. This isn't something that we want you to download to hear about our product. These are carefully thought out, deliberately created pieces of content and guides, ebooks, blogs, etc., to help you in your day-to-day operations. So again, the knowledge library is right there on the front page of GrowthZone.com. All right, the goal is to have a little bit of Q&A towards the end of the session. Now this is the big thing. If you have a question, please try to put it in the Q&A panel. I know that sometimes we are busy. I know you're all paying 100% attention and nobody's doing anything else. But sometimes we're busy, we forget, we put it in the chat panel. But it's super helpful if any questions that you have for Amanda are put in the Q&A panel, and then we'll have a list to go through at the end of the webinar. If we don't get to it, Amanda is happy to answer questions afterwards. We might be able to stay a couple minutes later. I know she's busy. But also if we have questions coming in that aren't answered, we'll send those to her by email. Now, okay, so the reason that you're actually here is Amanda Kaiser. Hi, Amanda.
Hello.
We're so happy she's here. She's been so busy this year. It's really awesome to have her. So earlier this year, Amanda teamed up with Matchbox Virtual Media to produce what's called the Virtual Networking Incubator. And it's one part lab, one part testing ground, one part problem-solving event, where they had over 150 association professionals meet, and they had one goal, and that was to determine if virtual networking events could be meaningful, helpful, and fun. So not only did they discover that virtual networking events could be meaningful, helpful, and fun, they also discovered the key factors in having those events be valuable for the virtual attendees and in-person attendees, which I know a lot of people, we're all struggling with that. So join me in welcoming Amanda as she shares data, strategies, and tips directly from her 2-month-long 7-session virtual networking incubator. Let's get going. Hi, Amanda.
Awesome. Hello. Thank you so much, Amy. And hello, everybody. I'm so excited to be here. So we're here to talk about creating meaningful networking events. But it is really hard to do that when members hide or attendees hide from networking events. Now you might be thinking, wait, did I just hear her right? Did she just say hide? Yep, I said hide. Some people, some professionals actively hide from networking events. They might go and see a speaker, and when it's time to work, they duck out because they got to get back to the office, or they might attend a conference but stay in their room during the reception. These behaviors are super normal and very, very common among introverts, which we would expect, but also ambiverts and extroverts as well. So I have a question for you to answer in the chat. And I just want to reiterate what Amy just said. Make sure that your chat is set to everyone so that you can see everyone else's responses and they can see your responses. So go ahead, head on over to the chat. And here is the question. What percent of your members hide during networking events? Now, this is a hunch. What is your hunch? I'm not looking for a statistically accurate number. Just pop your guesses into the chat. What do you think? Okay, so I am seeing 10%, 25%, 90%, 15, 30, 75, 60, 80. We are, somebody said 99%, just kidding, 65%. Okay, so everybody wants to hide, right, during some networking event. So whether you said 5% or 90%, there are some amount of your members and attendees that want to hide from a networking event. Now, why would members hide when networking is so good for their careers? There's many, many pieces of research that document how good networking is, and having a big, robust network and a quality network is so good for your careers. So why would people actively hide from a networking event? We're going to explore this together. And I've got a question for you in the chat. But before we get there, I just want to sort of remind you that networking is this very mixed bag, especially networking events. Sometimes networking is great, and you have an experience that makes you feel like you're on top of the world. You really connect with somebody. You really get help with something. There's some magic that happens during an event, in a hallway, at a reception. Sometimes you strike it lucky and networking is wonderful. And then sometimes networking is not so great. You probably have had an experience where you've been in a networking event and it's weird and awkward and all of those things. So let's kind of dive into this a little bit. And I want to get your thoughts on this, your personal thoughts. Don't try to think about what your members or your attendees are thinking. I want you to think about what you think about networking. So when you hear the word networking, what immediately comes to mind for you? Now, what I want you to do is I want you to let your ideas flow through your fingertips. Type a word or short phrase, hit return. If you've got another descriptor, go ahead and type that in as well. Feel free to make this a good, long, robust list. And I want you to know that there's no wrong answers here, because we've all had all kinds of experiences. Some are positive, some are negative, some are neutral. Okay, so let's see what's going on here. I'm seeing somewhat uncomfortable, connection, socializing, awkward. Somebody said, more small talk. Forced small talk, lots of talking, my back hurts, uncomfortable, building relationships, forced, insincere, discovery, opportunity, exchange of professional information. Let me go back up to the top and let's see what we've got here, because I know I missed some good ones. Let's see. Somebody said awful. Do I have to? Socializing, stuffy, connections, meeting new people, anxiety. I'm seeing a lot of anxiety. Yeah. Okay. So networking events are this totally mixed bag. And so this is something that I think we've got to think about, because when our members, especially our board members or our committee volunteers, are saying, we got to have receptions again, we got to do this, it's good to kind of go back and say, okay, that kind of stuff is a mixed bag. Now, I've got another question for you to answer, and it might feel like a little bit of a departure, but we're going to come right around. So I promise you, we're going to come right back around. And the question is what vegetable do you hate the most? What vegetable do you love to hate? My husband hates mushrooms. I can't even cook them in the house. Okay, so what are you saying? I'm seeing a lot of votes for lima beans and Brussels sprouts and a couple of mushrooms, but mostly lima beans. Somebody said broccoli and onion, more lima beans. Boy, those lima beans are getting no love at all today. Kales. Yeah, I love vegetables. Naomi, I hear you. There's still, I think about, I love vegetables too. And I even love asparagus, but sometimes when it's like overcooked or stringy or old, ugh, yuck. So there's all kinds of good things here. Amy, I'm kind of with you. Cooked green peppers are not my thing either. Okay, so we've got a good long list here. And the reason why I asked you this question is because there are veggies, there are foods that we love to hate. And if you're looking at what everybody else is writing and you see your least favorite vegetable on this list, you might have a visceral reaction, that reaction that you get in the pit of your stomach that's like, ugh, yuck, ugh. I remember when I was 5 years old and my mom, she cooked this stewed tomato casserole and I hated it. And we lived in a house where if somebody put food on your plate, you ate all of it. And when it's getting served up and you don't like it, that visceral feeling of, yeah, well, the word networking, believe it or not, is like that for many people. When they hear just the word networking, they have that visceral pit of your stomach, butterfly kind of reaction. So for many professionals, networking is a trigger word. And we know that networking is good for our careers, but we don't love it most of the time, kind of like eating our asparagus, right? And so we asked the incubator participants why networking is difficult. And this is what they said. They said a lot of what you just said. They said, it's awkward and there's rejection that's possible, imposter syndrome, vulnerable, judgment, exhausting, pressure, fear, stress. And then there's this word that came up with the participants, and that was cringe, right? When you hear that cringe, don't you get that like, oh, anxiety? Yes, all of that stuff. So networking, mixed bag, scary, scary, scary. And one of our jobs as event hosts is to take the scary out of networking. And okay, so let's talk a little bit. So Kate just said it's being in the arena. I am not sure, Kate, but I wonder if you're a Brene Brown fan. I remember Brene Brown saying something like that. Like if you're in the arena, you're doing some really good stuff. Kate said, yes. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. All right. Soul sister there and some good like-minded thinking. I really love her stuff. Okay. So we know that, at the same time, offering meaningful networking is super, super important. It's important because for our members, because there's so many positive outcomes for networking. So let's talk about those positive outcomes right now. Oh, Kate said it's a Roosevelt quote. I forgot that. I'm so glad that you reminded me. She picked it up from him. Yep. Okay. Awesome. Okay. So let's do some brainstorming. What are some of the positive outcomes that your members get from networking? Let's let your ideas through your fingers. I'm seeing, okay, new business, new connections, business lead, new relationships, knowledge, meaningful ideas, personal connections, friendships. You guys are writing so fast, I can't even keep up. Keep it going. This is great. Visibility. We are not the enemy. Oh, that's interesting, Beth. Community, discussion of common challenges, fun, spouses potentially from networking. Yeah. Let's see, education, acceptance. This is not your grandfather's chamber. New information, relatability. Ooh, that's really interesting. Love it, love it, love it, love it. Okay. So, so you have all just pointed to the finger to the fact that networking is important. So on one hand, we've got networking is scary. And on the other hand, we've got networking is important. So let's see if we can bridge that gap. Now, if you've heard me talk before, you may remember me speaking about the two sides of our brain. We have two experience and decision makers in our brains. One is logical and the other one is emotional. So you can see here how the benefits of networking line up on either side of the brain. So on our logical side of the brain, we have benefits of networking like preparing for a job change, spotting trends, sharing ideas, identifying solutions, discovering vendors or consultants. And this is just a short list. There's other benefits, but this is just some ideas. And on the emotional side of our brain, the feeling side of our brain, there are benefits like making friends or finding your next spouse, feeling a sense of belonging, find or be a mentor, identifying future collaborators, get emotional support, and normalizing experiences. So this is sort of an interesting thing because members are going to talk about the logical side of things, and they're not going to talk about the emotional side of things, but the emotional benefits might be more important than the logical benefits when people are making their decisions. So you might hear a member say that networking event was great for me because I got a new idea for a problem I'm wrestling with, or that networking event was great for me because I found somebody that I wanted to hire, or that networking event was great for me because I just found somebody that I want to work with. So that's the logical side of our brain speaking. What members might not tell you is what they're feeling in regard to your networking event. Some feeling examples are that they realize that they're not the only one with a problem. So they've got some kind of professional or business problem, and it felt like they were the only one until they came to your event and they realized that they're not the only one. Not only are they not the only one, they find out that this problem is totally normal. It's common. There's a lot of people that have that problem here. And so these emotional benefits have a ton of value. Now, despite the fact that some members associate networking with overboiled, mushy brown broccoli, we think that we can design networking events that are much more meaningful and fun. Now, before I just talk a little bit about design, it's important to take a step back and note that for many members, networking is synonymous with reception. Networking equals reception. When you say the word networking, when people are visualizing what that word means, they're thinking reception. So no wonder networking can trigger some really negative emotions, because receptions are great for your board members, for people who already have a large network, for a lot of your consultants and vendors, because they know a lot of people. It's good for people who are bringing their own people, right? You know, for people who they come with their whole office, they're traveling in packs. But based on our findings and findings from many, many, many other research studies, reception style networking is not optimized for most of your participants. I'm going to guess, and this is not statistically valid, but 80% of attendees that could go to a reception style networking event, it's not optimized for them. Now, these are the people who are first timers, the people who don't know anybody, the people who have not built their network yet. So one of the things we talked about a lot in our virtual networking incubator is that networking has been too narrowly defined. And one of the interesting outcomes from the incubator was that we totally expanded the definition of networking. It's no longer just about receptions, but it's about so much more when we're talking about events. So after watching the interactions and the outcomes of the incubator sessions, my partner in crime, Ariana Riak, she's the CEO of Matchbox Virtual Media, found that there was three different categories of networking. The first was to feel connectedness with a larger community. The second was to solve a specific problem. And the third is to identify people you're interested in connecting with. Now, I'm curious, we just went from networking equals reception to networking equals three other things. It's connectedness with the community and solutions and finding interesting people to connect with. Now, I haven't defined these for you yet because we're going to dive deep into all of them. And I'm going to give you tons of examples and tips and all kinds of good stuff. But before I even do that, I'm curious. When you see these three categories of networking, what feelings come to mind for you? What are you thinking right now? Untrue. Okay, Devin, I'd love to hear that. What do you have some more categories? Okay, possibilities, productive. What do I have to do to make this happen? We're going to talk about that, Rachel. Relatable, longer term relationships, positive, more positive. What to do helps me organize. Amy says a little unrealistic. Okay, we can dive into that. And if you have questions along the way, definitely ask them. Let's dive into this stuff. Let's see. More positive, learning together. Okay, so I think there are some of you that are like, I don't know about this. And there are some of you that are like, hey, there might be some cool opportunities here. So let's dive in a little deeper because I think we've got some really interesting stuff here. Okay, so this sharing that we've been doing in the chat is one category of networking. So one of the things we heard that we did with the incubator participants, we had over 150 participants. And we started every event all together as a big group. And then often we would go off and we would do some activity and then we would reunite and do a debrief all together as a group. And we used chat when we were all together as a group. And they like that. To them, that this using the chat and answering questions and looking at everybody else's responses helped them feel connectedness to their community. People read the chat and they saw other people's comments that reflected their own thoughts. Now, the chat can also be a place to solve problems. And I want to open the floor and invite you to use the brilliance of all of the collective minds we have on this webinar today. And there are a lot of you on the call today to help solve a problem. So if you have a networking event coming up and you would like some ideas, type your question into the chat. Now, let me give you an example of something like that. What you can do is you can preface your question by saying everyone, or you can say all, and then you can ask your question. So this is just one question I had. Everyone, what are some fun icebreaker questions that you've asked? And so if you've got questions like that, something that you want to freshen up or change, or, something where you feel like you can get the group to sort of, jump on, ask everyone to help you brainstorm. Now, somebody just said, many of us hate chats and typing. Yes, Greg, I do hear that a lot. And there are lots of people who love the chats and typing. There's, it is a mixed bag, right? With virtual and in person, you can't, not every single solution is for everybody, but you're going to find within your membership that there are some people that want to go to those little breakout groups and they're going to want to talk. And then some people who love the chat. And I think as hosts, we can do a little bit for everybody. Okay. So I see some good questions there. Some people are answering that question about, some fun icebreakers, which is awesome. I'm going to pull this chat down later and take a look at it because you guys are giving me some great ideas. Okay, so the virtual chat also contributes to the last category of networking. And here's an example. Maybe you've had an experience where you've watched the chat and there was a contributor or two, another participant or two whose answers you found really profoundly interesting, or cathartic, or, much like they're saying the words that you're thinking, but you don't know how to express, and they've just said it. And maybe afterwards you've reached out to them or wished that you could reach out to them. Chat falls into the identify people to connect with category as well. Now, chat is great. It's super under leveraged as a networking tool, but it's easily scalable. One of the reasons why I like chat is because it works with 30 people or it works with 300 like we have today, or 600 people. So chat is great. Now let's dive into some more examples in each category, because I don't want to keep talking about chat because there's so many other things to do. And when it comes to networking and virtual networking. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to talk about the category of feeling connectedness within your larger community. Now, I'm going to give you an example from the incubator. And if you have an example from either a virtual or in-person event that you want to share, we'd love to hear it. Everyone's stories help all of us. I think the saying is a high tide floats all ships or raises all ships or something like that. So when I talk about feeling connectedness with the community, it's that feeling of finding your people, knowing that even if you don't know everybody, on the webinar or the call or in the event, that somebody said something and you think, oh yeah, these are my people. These are my people. So if you have had an event where you fostered that feeling the connectedness with a larger community and want to share an example, type it into the chat, because we'd love to read what you've done. And I'll give you some examples as well. Okay. So this is all about finding your people. And we've talked about having how a super interactive chat can help people feel the community. There's other interactive big and small group activities, but we did a big group activity that are great for feeling the community. Now, it's good to kind of take a step back, because this happens in in-person events pretty readily. I noticed that there was this benefit with many in-person conferences or in-person events of feeling a community. And so a new attendee for the very first time will go to your event. And if there is a speaker, that person takes the stage and they might use some industry terms or talk about something that's really pressing right now. And a new attendee will hear that and they'll say, oh yeah, I've landed in my place. This is right. Yeah. But it's been harder to get that feeling of the community in virtual events. And so during the incubator, we experimented a lot with this. And one of our experiments was with a platform called Pickles. Let me drop that link right for you into the chat. So with Pickles, we asked a lot of questions and participants drew their thoughts. So we asked the question to start off, our virtual networking incubator, do you like networking? And people, somebody gave the thumbs up. Now this is everybody drawing independently. And then somebody, give a smiley face. And then somebody else said, no, don't like networking. This is where somebody is representing it with colors. Most of the time networking events are kind of neutral, but sometimes they're good and sometimes they're really bad. So you can kind of see here that everybody is drawing on their own. Now, what you can do as the event host is you can show everybody's responses. It's actually something that you can use with Zoom. And you can show everybody's responses by sharing your screen and showing the leaderboard. And so it's really kind of neat. As people are drawing, you actually see their drawings kind of manifest all together. And it's really cool. So this is one of the ways that you can help people see the community without actually using the chat or feel the community. One of the things that Pickles did for us is they took all of our pictures and they helped make some really cool content. And I've got to say that the participants of the incubator did not love everything we did, but they loved Pickles. So if you're at all interested, it's something really cool to check out. Now, this is just one example of how we leaned into the outcome of feeling connectedness with a larger community. And I'm curious, did anybody share an example from their own organization or even something that you saw in another organization? And Amy, I've not been actually watching the chat. So I'm wondering if you see any examples from folks here about, feeling connectedness with a larger community.
I am scrolling there. It's an awesome active chat, and we will download it and include it with the recording.
Great.
A lot of questions here. Virtual photo booths.
That's fun.
Improv games. Speed networking. Am I on the right path here?
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
I see that speed networking, within
with
the
larger event.
Yep.
Smaller breakouts. I'm getting back into questions.
Yeah. No, there's some great questions here. Yeah, so Greg has a question here. How do you turn a virtual networking gathering into going out for supper together with 10 people? That's interesting. I'm not entirely sure. If you know, for everybody here, if you've got some answers for Greg, please do chime in. I'm not entirely sure, Greg. If you're looking for, like, you know, how do you whittle down this really big group and find the 10 people that I want to go out to supper with? Or if you're trying to figure out how to take virtual into in person. So if you want to give, you know, everybody a little bit more context to that, that would be awesome.
60 ideas in 60 minutes.
Yeah, 60 ideas in 60 minutes. That's awesome. Okay, there are some really cool ideas here. Okay. So what I want you to do is I want to invite you to do, you know, two things throughout the duration of my whole presentation. One is, if you got any questions that you want people to brainstorm about, drop your questions in there, and everybody feel free to just pile on and answer those questions. And then if you've got examples, so, you know, as we talk about each one of these categories, feeling connectedness or solving a problem, you know, and you've got examples that you've used that work, you know, write those into the chat and say, hey, everybody, I did this and it worked and it was kind of cool. So I invite you to do all of that. The more sharing we can get today, the better we're going to be. Okay, so let's talk about that next, our next category of networking. So we just talked about feeling connectedness with a community. And our second category is solving a problem. Now, solving a problem is one of my favorite types of networking. And we found in the incubator that there's 3 types of problems. Before I get that, let me tell you why I love the solving the problem in terms of networking, because maybe it doesn't feel like networking, but to me, it's networking. And one of the things that I've found through my career, but also through my research with member organizations, is that when people are united by a goal and when they're working together, it sometimes, a lot of times, fosters, you know, this very tight knit relationships that wouldn't have, otherwise sprouted up. And you can get that feeling by working together for just 5 minutes, and you can also get that feeling by working together in something really in depth over, say, a weekend or a conference or something like that. So I love, love, love the idea of solving a problem. And by solving a problem in your industry or your profession or even in your organization, you know, we're networking while we're doing it. So there's 3 types of problems. And this becomes really important when you think about how to design your event. So 3 different types of problems. The first type of problem is a member's desire to improve upon something that they're already doing. It's changing an existing thing. They're looking for a bunch of fresh ideas, and they'll select what's right for them after they've received a whole bunch of brainstormed ideas. And they'll kind of like pull from those ideas from the community and select which ones that they want. And this is the kind of problem solving that we did in the incubator. I'm gonna show you one example. So we used Google Jamboard. Oh, I see you guys are all sharing resources. Kahoot, awesome. Yeah, so we use Google Jamboard to let participants brainstorm asynchronously. So in our incubator, we did 7 sessions, and there was a 2-week gap between every single one of our live sessions. And we wanted to have a place where in between times people could go to talk and help each other and ask questions and answer questions. And Jamboard was one of those places for us. So we love this interplay of live and asynchronous activities. And we were thinking a lot about, you know, if you were having, say, like a one-off kind of event, could you start off with asynchronous, or could you follow up with asynchronous? You know, what could you do there that's really kind of fun? And for us, this use of Jamboard really helped us bridge the gap between those, you know, the live events. And you don't even have to do that. You know, Jamboard could happen during a live event. You could ask questions like this, You could post them in the live chat. You could open up a Jamboard and, send everybody the link and let them put their little Post-its on it, right in the middle of your meeting. And it's cool. You can see everybody crowdsourcing real time. So that's I think that's a really cool thing. Let's see, how are we doing on time? We're doing great. So we're going to actually experiment a little bit with this kind of problem solving. Now, again, this is just changing an existing thing, and I'm going to pose a problem that perhaps you've encountered before. So let's say that there is a meeting planner. Her name is Mary. She plans all kinds of virtual events for her organization. And she finds that most people don't log in on time. I don't know if this has ever happened to you. It's totally happened to me. And what happens is those latecomers, they miss the introductions and they miss the exciting intros, and they might miss, instructions. And their satisfaction at the end is always lower. So how can Mary encourage virtual participants, to log in on time? What are some ideas that you have? How can we, actually, this is kind of a question for all of us, because the answers could be really, really important. How do we encourage our virtual participants to log in on time? First 5 people get money. Prizes. I love the unofficial start. So Shelly was one of our participants in the incubator. I'm so excited to see you here, Shelly. If there's any other incubator participants, yay, hello. Prizes, incentives, email mailers. Okay, so Shelly just mentioned unofficial starts. We started every single one of our gatherings 3 minutes before the hour. And the unofficial starts would run 1 or 2 minutes into our allotted time. And there were always activities. There were fun activities, and they served a couple of purposes. One, they rewarded the early birds, right? Because the early birds got on and they had something fun to do. And the other, and so we started over time kind of, showing people that logging in on time or logging in early was a really good thing to do. Another thing is we were doing something different with our unofficial start activities, and people noticed that. And so it made them want to engage with what we were doing. And then the last thing was we helped to set the tone for the whole event that followed. We would pick unofficial start activities that might prime you for participation. And so those are really fun. Shelly, I'm really glad that you brought that up. Okay, let's get back to some problem solving here. That looks like there's other people. Amy did an unofficial start. That's awesome. Hearing lots of like raising up for the unofficial starts. Very cool. Okay. So the second problem type is from a member's point of view, when they're thinking about a problem they want to solve, it's I want to do something that I have never done before, but other people in my profession or industry have done this. In other words, there's some known answers out there. And these tend to be questions around new projects, like, hey, I want to do this new thing in social media, this new thing with video, or this whatever it is. And I just want to see what other people are doing because we've never done it before at our organization. It can be questions around managing people. I've got a difficult personality to manage, or a difficult situation, or a difficult boss. Or it can be around implementing technology. There's some really new technology, and we have not implemented, but I think there's some people who have. So again, it's tasks that somebody's done before, not just the person asking. So in this problem type, members and attendees share what they've tried or what they've heard other people have tried. And to tackle this problem category in the incubator, we asked folks to noodle on how they overcame professionals' networking problems. So we were asking them in this particular instance, or my example is they were solving for what gets in the way of connections. Let's talk a little bit about that. In this particular activity, we let people pick the subtopic in the group they were most interested in talking to. And we used a technology where they could pop in and out of conversations. The platform is called Wonder. Let's see. Lynn just asked, are we going to get a copy of the chat? And the answer is yes. Yes, we're going to download this. And I believe Amy's going to include it in the roundup email that you're going to get with the recording and the chat and some other really good stuff that I'm going to talk to you about at the end of the
so much
program.
stuff on that page. People they're going to have to come to it twice.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Okay, so Wonder, if you're thinking about using Wonder or interested in demoing Wonder, it's the most, I would say it's the most reception-like of all the platforms I've experienced. So people, they can kind of like virtually walk around and they can jump into conversations, but they can also pull themselves out of conversations. So if you look at my screenshot, which is unfortunately a little, it's a little pixelated, but if you see circles with all these little dots, those are people and conversations, and you can set up kind of like rooms on the space by topic, so people know where they want to go. And if it ends up being a conversation that they love, great. It looks a little bit like a Zoom breakout room. And if they're done with the conversation, they just sort of pull themselves away quietly and they can go off and find another conversation. We found that this platform is great for folks who already know each other, or for people who connected maybe earlier in your virtual conference or in an in-person conference. And if you're thinking about creating more hybrid experiences, this could be done, after the fact, because it helps people continue that conversation. Okay, let's talk about our third problem type. And this is the big, juicy, hairy problems. It's the whole industry challenge. Now, I believe that this space is a huge opportunity for many member organizations, because what we're talking about here is big, thorny problems that most members or attendees have, but nobody has a good solution to. These can be problems like retention or industry consolidation or price pressure. They're problems that people may not even want to talk about. They're a little fraught. They're a little anxiety ridden. And we tackled one of those conversations ourselves within the Incubator. It was a tough question. And the question was, how do you create and foster much more psychological safety in your communities and events to help people meaningfully connect, collaborate, and co-create? And the thought behind this question in regards to networking was, if you're feeling fear and anxiety, if you're feeling like you're not a part of the crowd or bullied or something like that, then you're not going to want to share your very best ideas. You're probably not going to want to share at all. You're going to step back. You're going to tune out. You're going to push away. We don't want that. We don't want that, right? So we talked about when in member organizations, when cliques form and how detrimental those could be. We talked about over-talkers. We talked about the self-appointed police. We talked about all those behaviors that break the chain of safety. And we did all of this in a platform called Circles. Sometimes it's hard to have conversations like this in Zoom breakout rooms. I'm not saying it's impossible. Sometimes it's hard. And Circles is another alternative for you. And it's an interesting platform because it was intentionally designed to foster really, really intimate conversations, really good conversations. So it's a platform that helps you take a big group and then break out into very small groups to have facilitated conversations. And this is what I think is one of the lovely parts: facilitated conversations without a facilitator. I know I run into this problem a lot when I'm doing half day or full day long presentations, and there's time for breakout groups. And we usually need a facilitator. And that becomes really problematic when you want to have, 50 breakout groups. How do you have a facilitator for, one of each of 50 breakout groups? Well, their technology is actually designed to have the agenda and sort of technologically take the place of a facilitator, which is really interesting. It's also designed to reduce interrupting and monopolizing so everybody can participate in a really deep, meaningful conversation. Now, I will tell you, as with Pickles, Incubator participants loved this platform. I would totally recommend checking it out. Now, a few things to keep in mind if you want to hold a problem-solving event, and I really hope that you do because members love these. The bigger the problem category, the more time and structure you need to plan for as a host. So in other words, when you're doing like, these little things, we just want to change something existing. We want to talk about something like, what icebreakers have you tried? That's something you can throw into the chat. It doesn't need a lot of structure. You just ask the question in the chat and people pile on and answer it. But when you're getting to your big, thorny, really hairy, juicy problems, you'll need a lot of structure for people to walk through how to talk about and how to engage with those problems. Another really interesting thing is the bigger and thornier the problem, the fewer participants you can have in any given conversation. You might start out as a 600-person, group having a conversation, but you eventually want to break up into individual conversations of, say, 4 to 5 people. And you can totally scale this with technology online. So I am curious to ask you all again, has anybody run a problem-solving event? And what was it like? What was your problem-solving event like? So feel free to pile on, because it might give people some more ideas than what we did in the incubator to run a problem-solving event. And as you're thinking about that, I'm going to continue on with our third category of networking. So the third category is identifying people to connect with. So a few years ago, I was fielding some custom research for an association, and I had on the phone one of their members who was a raging extrovert, so extroverted, incredibly extroverted. And I was surprised by what he said because he was so extroverted. He said that he didn't hide from networking, but he still found networking and reception specifically to be a waste of time. And he said this, I quote, "When you walk into a ballroom, it's just luck if you happen to have a conversation with the right person. Instead, it's just a night of tedious small talk." And he's not alone. I've heard this over and over. So there's many, many ways to help your members find their people without sort of using luck, to find the right people you need to talk to. And we tested some one-on-one networking platforms where participants were paired with 1 or 2 other people to have, James said, make your own luck. I agree with that. Yeah. So we did, some one-to-one networking platforms are, so essentially what the platforms do is they start off with the whole group. And then for 5 or 7 or 8 minutes, people go away and they're paired off with other people that they might like to meet. And they get to have a conversation. And then as the host, you can help them have a conversation by setting up conversation cards for them to flip over and maybe start their conversation by asking some questions of each other. If they're already having great conversation, they don't even have to use the cards. It's totally okay, however it works out. But that's just another way to identify people to connect with. And I think there's lots and lots and lots of ways. Oh, Kristen says we use Blitzer for this. So if there are examples that you've used for, how do you pair up the right people to get in, to have a conversation? Can you pair them up by topic, by title, by member type, all of those things? How do you do that? Feel free to share any examples in the chat that you've been using. And I'm going to try to clear my throat to dive into our last set of slides. Because one of the things, and this was another surprise for us, that we learned by doing a virtual networking incubator during the height of COVID, when there was no in-person at all, was that many of the ideas that worked virtually worked in person as well. So these 3 categories of networking that we were just playing with work both virtually and in person. So the idea of planning an event or designing an event so you can feel connectedness with the community, or designing an event to solve a problem, or designing an event so people can connect the people to the people that they need to connect with, can happen virtually or in person. And we found that there's a bunch of other learnings that are transferable from virtual to in-person as well. And what I'm going to share with you is 3 more learnings, and they're particularly important because they help prime you for participation. So if you can get people participating early on in your in-person or virtual networking event, it really takes a lot of awkwardness away from them because they jump right in. They don't even have time to stand back and be a wallflower because they're participating. So the first thing that I recommend is that you do is you create a safe space. We did this with a code of conduct, but it was not any old code of conduct because even the name code of conduct didn't fit with the tone of the incubator. If you think about codes of conduct, legalese, it's all about what you can't do, not about what you can do. So what we did with the help of the incubator participants was write a golden rule haiku. Again, this was co-created with all of the participants. And at the beginning of every single one of our sessions, we recited this golden rule haiku. We did some jazz hands. And we started every single session off that way by grounding ourselves in the way we all wanted to be. Okay, another way to prime for participation is to pay very close attention to the tone that you use. Now, we wrote all of our messaging, whether it was on the website or through emails or in reports, as if we were each recipient's best friend. And we hope that the tone would do a couple of things. We hope that it would increase clicks and opens. And that worked well because all of our emails had open rates somewhere in the range of 50 to 70%. We also hope that a positive tone would prime people to participate. And that seemed to work as well because we had people logging in early and they were totally ready to go. And then finally, we hope that a friendly tone would help create a culture of openness and kindness and exploration. And our participants were amazing in this regard. So setting that right tone can totally attract and engage and prepare your members for your next networking event. Now, another thing that we found that's important, and this is transferable from virtual to in-person, is that structure is super important. Our event networking schedules were jam-packed with activities. And the reason why we did this was because participants told us that professionals are kind of primed to think that networking is awkward, and it's awkward because there's nothing to do but small talk. So if you guide your participants through a whole session of, fun, fast, meaningful, exciting activities where they, as a byproduct, start having really meaningful conversations, they'll start meeting those folks and getting those ideas that they most need to have. So again, the top 3 things that help people participate, whether virtually or in person, is to, number 1, create a safe space. 2, you can warm up your tone. And 3, have a lot of structure in your events. Now, I'm going to hand the reins back to Amy for questions in just a minute. And so while you're thinking about your networking questions, your virtual networking questions, or even if you have questions about the incubator, here are some resources for you. So our super, super cool participants put together, we like to say it's like a cookbook of recipes for virtual networking events. And I'm going to drop the link for you in the chat right now. So if you're looking, I think there's something like 35 recipes in there, and it covers the range of, hey, you want to do something for 5 minutes, or you want to do something for 90 minutes. You want to problem solve, you want to help people meet each other. What do you want to do? All of those recipes are in the cookbook. Gotta love our participants for putting that together. So awesome. But that's not all. I have something super special for you all, because at 9:00 last night, I got an email from my partners at Matchbox, and they said that the virtual networking roundup report is ready. So earlier, I would say earlier this summer, I wrote a book essentially of the most important things we learned about networking. And Matchbox has been busy making it beautiful. And you all are getting access to it now. You are the first people to get this, and I would love to know what you think. So follow that link to Matchbox's site and look for an orange button, and that's where you're going to get the final roundup. Okay, so awesome. I'm excited that you guys are excited about the roundup book, and please drop me a line on my website, LinkedIn, Twitter. If it's useful for you, I'd love to know. So I'm sorry, Amy, I've been hogging up the floor here. What questions are you seeing about networking or the incubator or virtual networking?
We have some great questions. I do want to reiterate, you are the first people to see the book from this project. She literally got it last night. So nobody else in the association or chamber space has seen it yet. So finally, if you ever wanted to be the first one in on something, this is your moment.
I feel like maybe the link is not working yet. Maybe you've all hit it so fast you took their whole server down. Let me see. Yeah, let me see if I can find that for you.
We will definitely have the link on the page with the recording. So no worries if you can't pick it up out of the chat, you will have access to it. And that recording, again, next 24 hours. Okay, let's get to a few questions. One of them is, can you give some examples of unofficial start activities?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Shelley, if you remember some of the ones that you like the best, feel free to chime in. And let me also give you another link. So I've got a colleague, a friend at playmeo.com, and it's where I got most of my unofficial start activities from. So they write, if you need like an energizer, something fun for people to do in the middle of a session, or, unofficial starts or something to like end up your session, that's kind of fun. Playmeo is a great place to go. They actually started with all of their activities in person, and then they've been slowly adapting and creating more activities for virtual. So you find the whole mix on playmeo.com. Shelley says the drawing city. So we did one toward the end of the incubator. So the beginning of the incubator, we really grounded in, why networking, what's working, what's not working, in all of that. And toward the end of the incubator, it was all about innovation and experimenting and ideas in the laboratory. So when Shelley says drawing the city, toward the end of the incubator, we really wanted people to start getting in that creative mode that we were all creating together, that the host didn't have the answer was in the community. And so one of the things we did with our unofficial start time is ask people to draw all together using the annotate feature in Zoom, and we drew a city. You can ask people to draw a garden, you can ask people to draw a forest. Another thing that we did was I like this one. This is an easy one. Is we showed some slides and we asked, are you more like tea or coffee? Are you more like a cat or dog? Are you more like fire or water? And in person, people can raise their hands. It can cause some dialogue. Virtually, what we did is we asked those questions on slides, and we asked people to use annotate, to use stamps to select which one they were more like. And the last question we asked was, are you an extrovert or introvert? And so we got sort of like a survey response in a way to know if our participants were extroverted or introverted. And that was very interesting for us because we were talking about networking. Okay, let me hand it back to you, Amy. I hope that was, how do you annotate in Zoom? Asked Deirdre. There is, in Zoom meetings, there is a control that the host can turn on to allow your participants to annotate. And if you look, I believe Zoom has provided some training on the host side for that. And then it's just a matter of sharing how to do that with your participants.
All right. This one says, I want to know what events or topics our members are interested in having a session around in 2022. What is a good platform to collect this during a live meeting? That's a good one.
Oh, that is a really good one. So you can definitely pull information from data from your chat. So you could ask questions that would get people to pull data from the chat. You could get people to, you could ask a question and get them to respond on Jamboard. You could use polls to get people to vote. I'm a little sometimes not excited about polls because they can leave out a bunch of opportunities. You could do something that I call a chat waterfall. So you could ask a question, like what is one problem that is really pressing for you right now? And you could have, everybody fill in their problem on the chat. And then you could say to everybody, okay, now scroll up and down the chat, find a answer that somebody else gave that you just love, and then you paste that into the chat. Say, I love this, and then they paste the other person's answer. And then that way you get kind of like a sense for what topics are being upvoted. So that's a cool one.
I like that. Can you explain more about how Wonder can positively impact networking events? Before you answer that, I just want to say, if anybody needs to log off, feel free. You will receive the recording, a link to the recording, and the page that the recording's on is going to have links to everything we've talked about today, as well as all of the resources. But if you'd like to stay on for Amanda to answer a few more questions, feel free. We are at the end of the hour, but we'd love to continue. All right, go ahead.
All right. So the question is, can you explain more about how Wonder can positively impact networking events? And I'm going to assume here that maybe you were talking about the platform Wonder. And if that is the case, let me just sort of answer this a little bit more broadly. We chose to try out a bunch of different platforms because there are things that are hard to do in Zoom. And so we just wanted to see whether the platform made the difference. And indeed, in some cases, it does. And so we wanted to see, how different activities, methodologies, and platforms affected everybody's experience. And Wonder was one of them that we chose. And that was good. And there was a lot of other platforms. I would say two of maybe the most meaningful platforms to our participants were Pickles and Circles. And that could have been because the way we used it, because of, a lot of these platforms are new. So that, sort of the development of the technology, it could have been for many, many reasons. I would just love to encourage you to test platforms with maybe a beta group and see if there's cool, different, exciting things that you could do with your members that really, really help, heighten that networking experience.
Okay, we'll make this one the last one. How do you encourage people to write meaningful answers and thoughts in chat instead of just typing a few words?
Yeah. So I have a thought about that. And the few words is actually awesome. So one of the ways to prime people for participation is to get them to participate early and quickly and easily. So in all of my presentations or whenever I'm working with any group, I tend to just say a couple of sentences and then I immediately open it up. So in this particular case for your presentation, I asked you to guess, no wrong answers at all, what % of your members or attendees hide from networking. So all you had to do is type in, one or two numbers. And so that is the entry. It's one of those things where people are immediately participating. They see everybody else, the chat blows up, they see everybody else participate. So that's like, positive social reinforcement. And then when I think about how I put together my curriculum, if you will, for my event, I'll ask harder and harder and harder questions as we go along and start easy. So I think it's totally okay if people are participating in a very superficial way in the beginning, and then you can kind of slowly make them a little bit harder. Now, some groups are not going to have the time or energy or care about, really writing something robust in the chat. But sometimes you will find that people will. I've been on some events where you see people write paragraphs in the chat. And I got to tell you, as an event host, it's gold. That data is amazing. So I would just say, ask your questions progressively, and that will encourage people.
That is a great answer. That was a great question and a great answer. All right, so we are at the top of the hour and it is time for us to sign off. Before we do so, I want to reiterate, remind, assure that you will be receiving an email. That email will have a link to a page that has the recording itself, all of the links that we've talked about today, including the slide deck, the book, all these fun links that Amanda shared with us, some other things that I think would be useful. So you will be receiving that in the next 24 hours, and that will also have your CAE credit. So, and it won't have your name on it, and that's okay with ASAE. And otherwise, again, I encourage you to go to growthzone.com, visit our knowledge library, or click the button to go to an interactive product tour so you can see what we can do to help you and your organization. And again, thank you so much, Amanda, for being with us today. And it's awesome. Oh, I know what I was going to say. I'm going to share a link on that page that has Amanda's previous webinars on demand. So you can get a, I don't know, triple, quadruple play, whatever it is. There's a lot of them. So thank you everyone for taking the time to attend. Thanks Amanda for taking time out of your day to do this, and keep an eye on other emails from us for upcoming webinars. Bye everybody.